Intervals. If you don't know your intervals, trust me, you want to know your intervals. But you don't have to take it from me. You can take it from Mark Levine, the author of this big old book on jazz theory. And on the first page of this book, and it's actually the third page because the first 2 pages are the table of contents, but basically the first page, it says this: as atoms are the building blocks of matter, intervals are the building blocks of melody and harmony. That's exactly right. Now, what is an interval? Second sentence. A good definition of an interval is the space between 2 notes. Right, on a piano, space between 2 notes, that's the space between 2 keys, obviously, right? So what we're gonna do in this video is 3 things. First, I'm gonna put that book away. 3 things. We're gonna go through all the intervals. There are way fewer of them than there are atoms, fortunately. There are just 12 in Western music. They've all got these little personalities. You're gonna love it. And then I'm gonna talk at you a little bit more, about why I think intervals are so actually important to learn. And then thirdly, we're going to review the intervals, and I'm gonna add a little bit of information to that. Okay, so an interval, again, the distance between 2 notes. Now, because it's really about the distance between notes, it's a relationship between notes, so it doesn't really matter where we start on the keyboard. It's like if you were to show someone what a yard looked like because they weren't familiar with that system of measurement, you could show them by pointing out what a yard is off of the ground, or you could point it out on the sidewalk outside. Doesn't really matter, right? But for the sake of this exercise, let's go ahead and start on good old middle C. So coming up is the smallest interval, certainly, that you can play on a piano. It's kind of the smallest interval in Western music, basically. So it's this right here, the minor second. You see how these 2 notes are as snug as can be, doesn't get smaller than this. It's the smallest interval, it's the minor second. Kind of sounds like lemon juice to me. It's pretty grating on the ear, right? Especially if you just kind of play it like that. Next is the major second. It's kind of like orange juice. I don't have juices for all of these, but it's also a little bit sour if you just play it repetitively like that, right? Next is the minor third. You're probably detecting a pattern here. Next is the major third. Unfortunately, we are going to leave that pattern for just a little bit, but we will be right back to it. Here is the perfect fourth. It's not major, it's not minor, it's perfect. Next is the tritone. It's kind of a miscellaneous interval. And I know I said that I would stop with the juices, but I'm actually gonna go back on that and say that this is prune juice. It is a key ingredient in both Dr. Pepper and a very important chord that we are going to go in depth about in another video and other videos. Anyway, next is the perfect fifth. Then is the minor sixth. We're back to the minor major pattern, so you can guess that next is the major sixth, which kind of sounds like warm tea with a dollop of honey in it. That might be my favorite drink. This might be my favorite interval. Next is the minor seventh, then the major seventh, and finally the perfect eighth or octave. Eighth, octo, octave. This is where that comes from. Great. So why is it so important to actually learn these? Well, whatever you play on a piano, whether it's, a melody or a harmony, chords to go with it, or a bass line. All of these are basically just intervals dancing around each other. A lot of people, they will know how to play some things on piano. They will know how to play some quote-unquote pop tunes or some quote-unquote classical. But they won't actually know what it is that they're playing. To them, the keyboard is basically one big mystery. And it doesn't have to be. This chord sounds like a mystery, but it's not. It's just a minor third and a perfect fifth and a major seventh, all built from the same low note, which is usually how we do it when we're talking about chords. And just like that, you've got the first chord of your whodunit. Learning to play music and skipping the whole intervals thing that we just went over, it's kind of like learning how to read by just recognizing words in their entirety. You could do that now, but you couldn't when you started. There's this idea out there that music theory can help you determine why something sounds good. And I wouldn't go that far. That's kind of more like a psychoacoustics terrain or just personality. You know what sounds good. You've got ears, you like music. You don't have to question that. But what music theory will do, instead of telling you why something sounds good, it will tell you in more detail what something is, flat out. It'll help you describe it. And once you can describe it, you can make it more easy to memorize, more easy to transform, more easy to bring into other songs. It's easier to change keys. Let's say a singer is having an off day and they need you to lower the whole pitch of an entire song. You can do that a lot more easily once you know more stuff about chords and about scales and about keys, which basically are all built up of intervals, like that book said. You know, this video is really not something like 3 tricks to sound jazzier instantly. It's honestly the opposite of that. It is the ground floor of music theory. And there's some kind of weird covenant. I don't know why people don't go over their intervals more in music. A lot of teachers don't start here. A lot of students don't start here. You can do it in one sitting. You basically just did. We're going to review that again right now. You know, if learning these takes me approaching you with a bit of weird slap chop energy, I'm happy to do that. So let's go ahead and review those 12 intervals. And this time, let's do it from a different note. Again, it's all about the relationship between notes. So we could start from anywhere. And instead of middle C, let's start from the E above middle C, just for fun. Here coming up is the minor second. And the other name for this is a half step or a semitone. Okay, it's got a few names. Next is the major second, also known as a whole step or a whole tone, as you could guess. And we usually use the words half step and whole step when we're talking about actual movement, like in a scale or a melody. And we use the terms minor second and major second when we're talking about those being ingredients in chords, usually. Anyway, next is the minor third, the major third, the perfect fourth. And let me just say one more thing too. I'm giving you more information. So it doesn't matter what order you play these notes in, or even if you play them at the same time. This is still a perfect fourth, and so is this. It's really all about the distance. Next is the tritone, prune juice, yep. Different name for it. It is also an augmented fourth. Remember, this is the fourth, so this is an augmented fourth. It's also known as, the next interval is the perfect fifth, right? So the tritone can also be called the diminished fifth, okay? The tritone is really between the perfect fourth and the perfect fifth. So it's got those two names. It's either an augmented fourth or a diminished fifth. Anyway, again, the perfect fifth, then the minor sixth, the major sixth, the minor seventh, the major seventh, and the octave, or perfect eighth. Now, obviously, there are intervals that are bigger than this. I mean, you can keep going, right? What if I played this? Bigger than the octave that we just played. Well, this is just a fancier or more spread out version of another interval. So if we bring this G down to here, we can see that that thing we just played is basically a minor third, but spread beyond the octave. We call these intervals compound intervals when they go bigger than an octave. But as far as theory goes, for the most part, those are basically the same interval. Another thing that I think is worth doing if you are learning these for the first time, and if you don't really know many chords and scales already, is to actually memorize how many half steps it takes to build any of these intervals. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, for example, let's go back to our major third from E. If you count it out from 0, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. It takes 4 half steps to make a major third. Why is this stuff useful? Well, if I gave you this extra piece of information, which is that to build a major chord, you need a note, any note. From there, you need a major third. And from that same bass note again, you need a perfect fifth. So let's go ahead and do this from D. Why not? D, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's our major third. And then in a perfect fifth, there are 7 half steps. You're at 4 already, so you can just go 5, 6, 7. And that's it. That's your D major. And that's just the start. I mean, intervals make up all chords and all scales, and those things usually make up songs. So we're not going to lose sight of that. We are going to play some actual songs in this channel. So thank you so much for watching this video. Do learn your intervals, and I will see you soon. Oh wait, actually, one more thing. Let me leave you with one more quote from that Mark Levine book. It's before the first page. It's in the preface or the introduction. It says this: a great jazz solo consists of 1% magic, 99% stuff that is explainable, analyzable, categorizable, doable. Yeah, I like this. And you know, Mark Levine, I don't think he's related to Adam Levine. I mean, I haven't looked it up, but odds are pretty low. But still, when he says a great jazz solo here, you could substitute pop music for that. You could substitute classical music for that, blues, funk, whatever it is that you want to be playing. Intervals and the fact that these are explainable, analyzable, categorizable, doable, that applies to all music. And intervals is really the first step to making that so. So thanks for watching. See you soon.